and he told us to like to be quiet, basically. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Welcome. As you saw in the title, this is going to be part 2 of the story of how I found out he was married. So basically how I found out I was dating a married man. But before we get started into this story time, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to click on the thumbnail button so you can be notified whenever I post new videos. Okay. Before we get started, I'm just gonna say this. Like, I'm sharing these stories with you guys. Like, these are like past traumas of mine that I went through. This was years ago. I'm not gonna explain stories to you guys that are recent. I'm not. Any story that I'm doing on my story time, just know that's happened years ago. Okay. So no judging. And I do want you guys to remember I do have time to read comments. All right, back to the story. All right, so where we left off at was when I found out that Steve was married. When his wife called me, and me and her planned like a setup for her to confront him and me to confront him as well too, which we did do that. So this is gonna be part 2 on how Steve and I continued our relationship. Um, okay. So after that whole scene that happened, if you are not caught up as like if you're not caught up on to my story as to part 2 of what happened, you should go watch part 1 just so you can understand the sequels and not be a bit confused. So after I found out that Steve was married or whatever the case was, we went our separate ways. We broke up for like, I would say we broke up for like a month. I'd say 3 to 3 months, 3 weeks to a month. I mean, not lie, 3 weeks to a month. We were not talking with each other, but I guess I missed him and he missed me, and then that's just what it was, unfortunately. I was still in college. Was still living on campus. I was still doing what I had to do, or whatever the case was. And after that whole situation happened, you guys remember that Bestie was there, when the whole thing unfolded. So she knew exactly what was going on. She had expectations of me to like completely cut Steve off, like completely. She didn't want to hear nothing about Steve. She didn't want she didn't even want us to run into him. So I had already knew in the back of my mind that if I wanted to be sneaky and do some stuff, it could not have been with Bestie. There's a new person on this story. We're gonna call her Chickenhead. Why? Because she looked like a chicken head. So Chickenhead and we've been friends for years. Like, me and her have been friends prior to this situation. We've been friends since, I would say, middle school. We've been friends since middle school. So, but we weren't hanging out as as much at that time until I had to start being sneaky and seeing Steve behind Bestie's back. I know it sound crazy. So after a couple weeks, Steve ended up reaching out to me, and I responded. And he asked if we could like meet up, or he could take me out to dinner, or whatever the case was. And I said, yeah, sure, like you could do that. So he ended up picking me up again on campus, and we ended up going out to dinner. And honestly, we didn't really talk much about the situation. The only time we did was when we kind of made it like as a joke, as like when he would tell me like, why would you do that? Why did you do that? And things like that. Um, it was very inconsiderate of me, yes. Like, but then again, like, my feelings were involved here. Like, I was being selfish. I was not thinking about the other person's feelings, which was his wife. I was just thinking about my feelings and how I felt that moment. So yeah. After that dinner date, Steve and I started seeing each other. Like, it started to become a routine, like, consistently, but it was not like how it was before. You know how, like, back then he would go out to public places with me, take me to like his secret apartment, whatever. No, it wasn't that. If I was to see Steve, like, I would have if I wanted to spend the night with Steve, it would have to be like at a hotel. Yeah. At a hotel. And he had a curfew. Like he had a time where he would spend with me, and he had a time that he had to, go home. Um, at that time, every time me and him would hang out, there was this other friend that he started hanging around with because I guess he was embarrassed or ashamed from the situation that happened, especially in front of gang and the other friends. So he wanted to hang around people that didn't know that he knew his situation, but didn't know the full picture. So he had this friend. We'll call him. Let's call his friend Mike. So Steve brought introduced me to his other friend named Mike, and Steve, he always likes to do activities. So he would want to go. He would want to go to the club. Like he wouldn't want to go to a hookah lounge. He would still want to do those type of things, but we would go to like the isolated spots, like the ones that like is not a bunch of people that go there. If you know what I'm saying, like the undercover spots, those type of places. So at that time, Steve had told me to like, bring a friend of mine or whatever, and he knew like Bestie could not come because we were both scared that like Bestie will come, and then since she was involved in the whole setup thing, she would reach out to the wife. So I was the sneaky friend. Yes, I was a sneaky friend. Whereas too, I would like lie to my best friend and um go see Steve. And when Steve asked me to bring a particular friend so he could introduce a friend of mine to Mike, I immediately thought of Chicken Head. Um, Prior to that, Chicken Head and I have been texting here and there, but so I just decided to just go with her. And to be honest, she didn't really fully know the situation. She really didn't know too much. I tried not to tell her too much, but she had an idea, but she didn't know too much. You feel me? We were hanging out together all the time. Now this is when like I'm gonna explain this part right here, and this part is gonna show you guys why Steve and I stopped dating, stopped dealing with each other, um, stop talking, whatever. So I remember this day vividly. I remember that like I said, we would only see each other like to spend quality time like at hotels. And while when Chicken Head and Mike ended up, meeting, I don't know what those two had, but like every time I met up with Steve, especially like at the hotel or whatever, Mike when Mike is around, like, chicken head will come. So so one day we were all in a room or whatever, all having a conversation. Like I was at the edge of the bed. Steve was standing on the corner. Mike was sitting on one of those chairs, I believe, and Chickenhead was behind me laying in the bed. And Steve had gotten a call that day. Like he got a call. Like somebody was calling him phone back to back to back to back. So at first I saw him glance at his phone one time, and then he like flipped it over, but he didn't want to make it obvious, but I had already peeped that. So in the back of my mind, I already knew it was his wife, but I didn't want to believe that he was gonna pick it up. So after that, mm, the wife kept calling. Like she kept calling. Little mama was calling. She was calling to talk to her man. So he finally picked it up, and he told us to like to be quiet, basically, like to not make a sound. When he said that, I felt so jealous. It was so much jealousy and rage in me that I was like, why? Mike, Steve's little friend, was like, what you mean why? Because that's his wife.
Who you think you talking to, punk?
Excuse out of me. If that was his wife, then he should have known that before, making me his mistress, taking me to hotels, creeping out with me. Like, you should have mentioned that to your friend. But I'm never gonna lie to you. That shit really did hurt my feelings. That shit hurt my feelings so bad. Like it hit me like, oh damn, like I'm still the mistress. Like I'm dealing with a married man. And then honestly, when you're the mistress and you have friends like Mike, they will make you feel like a piece of they will make you feel like a piece of shit. And that's exactly what Mike did. Chicken Head is in the back, just sitting there, bobbling her head, just sitting there looking, of course, slow. Like, she was just looking like, I should have basically like she was looking at me like, oh, why'd you ask that question? Like you should have known or whatever. You should have known. Like just keep quiet. So after that event or whatever, when Steve got off the phone, like he felt bad. I did take him to the side and tell him like I didn't like what your friend did, like I didn't like what Mike said to me, and he totally understood. He tried to like make me feel better and comfortable, and he apologized or whatever the case was. And then after that, he Mike and Chicken Head decided to get their own room and leave Steve and I for quality time. So when they ended up leaving, Steve and I did end up spending some time together, whatever the case was. And I had a malicious plan. Like I had a malicious plan. I'm not gonna lie. I told myself that since we've been hanging out and we've been creeping together, like Steve has never spent the night with me. So I was telling myself like, no, tonight, like especially after what his friend just did, he's spending the night. Curls. So yeah, we spent quality time together or whatever. And we went to sleep after that. I remember him he woke up around 3 in the morning. It was the 3 in the morning. I remember sleeping so like I was cozy and warm. I was laying in bed with my man. Like I was good, And I just felt like I thought I won. I'm not gonna lie. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, like I see Steve, he like jump up, like that man just jumped up the bed. That scared the out of me. Like it scared the living daylight out of me. I got up, like, what's going on? What's wrong? As I'm saying that, like I have the sheets on me, like I'm trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Did someone knock the door? What is going on? Like, why did you just jump up like that? You scared the crap out of me. So as I'm like, trying to like rub my eyes because I he just woke me out of my sleep. I see Steve like rushing, like when somebody's like rushing to put their jeans on, put their shoes on, put their self together or whatever. Steve is doing that. So I just sat, I just laid up and not sat. I laid on the bed and I was just like I remember my voice was somebody's husband, y'all, somebody's husband. Oh my God. I remember seeing him doing that, and I remember like putting my head down or whatever, and then I looked back up and I looked at him and I was like, really, like, are you really gonna do this? Like, are you really leaving? I remember him like still rushing to put his stuff on, and then after that, he when he was done, he came towards like the edge of the bed where I was laying down, and he sat down and like he put his arms around me, and then he like was playing on my hair basically, and he was like, oh, like he was like, oh baby, like I have to go, like why, like what's going on, my situation or whatever the case was. Um, and he was like, I have to go, like, but I'll call you. I'll call you, and we'll plan some things. I could see you. And I remember him telling me, "Don't call me. Remember, I'm gonna call you." That that was, yeah, that was definitely the night that I was like feelings was, I don't want to say fully flushed or drained away, but I felt like a piece. I felt dirty. I felt like a piece of. I felt used. I felt manipulated. I felt played. I felt like this is not my place. Like, what am I doing? What am I doing? And instead of me trying to heal and recover, yes, I was still dealing with Steve on the side. I definitely was still dealing with Steve. Um, um, but like there's another part. I don't know if you guys want to know about that. It's like this story is honestly a sequel. Like that's how traumatic the story is. It's honestly a sequel. Let me know if you guys would like a part three, or you guys want me to start a new story time regarding the next story. This would be about how I found out that Steve, the same Steve that I'm talking about, was having an affair with my cousin. This man done he done did it. He honestly, this story, my life story with him, should be a Tyler Perry movie, honestly. Again, this part two story time was a bit short. I did want to just tell you guys how we were still sneaking around and what kind of like woke me up. But I really do hope that you guys enjoyed this story time. Thank you guys for watching and see you guys soon. Bye.
time. Like any time of day.